On this episode of Dead Last, we're going back to the earliest days of the genre with the Universal monsters. Most of the episodes that I've done are about current films or things like from the 80s or 90s, so it was a nice change to get into some classics. And the interesting thing about this one is that I don't think that there was a single clunker in this list. These were 11 great films, and these were the ones that I selected. Basically, like all the heavy hitters, although I couldn't quite decide which Phantom version to go with, so I put them both on there. And I figured we'd show the Spanish version of Dracula some love, since it's such an interesting piece of history. And, as usual, I sent this list to my patrons, and they ranked them up, and these guys answered the call. And here's how it works. If they ranked the movie in first place, they're number one. It got 1 point. If they had it in second place, it gets 2 points, and so on down the list. Since we had 11 movies on this roster, if they put a movie in dead last, it was in 11th place, and that one got 11 points. So then I just tallied up everyone's score. So since we had 32 entries, if every single person ranked the same movie as number one, worth 1 point each, it would have 32 points. If every person ranked the same movie as dead last, it would have a score of 352. Before we get to the rankings, I'll say that this list in particular is what I feel like Dead Last is all about. All of you out there watching this episode, every one of you has a unique opinion about the movies that you like. And you know what? They're all valid. My favorite thing every month is getting the rankings and seeing how varied the people's choices often are. And they like to explain why they liked what they liked. And if you're out there saying that you disagree with this ranking, there's nothing wrong with that. We encourage it. There's really no wrong way to like or dislike movies. So let's see what people liked and disliked with this one.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
So, you know, Father's Day is coming up, and I used to make fun of my dad for being notoriously hard to buy a gift for, but it turns out that as a dad, I'm kind of the same way, apparently. But it looks like Ridge has found the way to my heart, and I guess it's in my pants, because Ridge has redefined the wallet. And if you're like me, and you kind of streamlined what you carried, this is the answer. I mean, like, look at this. It's got this unique, expandable design that can hold up to 12 cards in it. Plus, it has room for cash, if that's something that people still carry. I actually had to go and get cash specifically just to make this video. I don't really carry cash, but it also has RFID protection, which is something that is very important to me, and it's available in over 30 colors. I've got the cool burnt titanium design here, but I also got this matching key case right here, which is pretty cool. Same color, same material, holds up to 6 keys. I only have 2. I don't have a lot of keys. And you, right now, can get up to 30% off your order when you buy the wallet and key case together as a set. And right now, with Father's Day coming up, it is a great time to let Dad know that you're thinking about what's in his wallet. That did not come out right, but he will love it because Ridge has over 3 million customers, 50,000 plus 5-star reviews, and you can test it out for 99 days. Not 90, 99. And you can get a full refund if it does not make you extremely happy. Plus, it comes with a lifetime warranty, so you can have some peace of mind. Grab it for your pops, get it for yourself, or just someone that you think is a pretty cool, rad dude. And right now, if you go to ridge.com/timelines, you can get up to 40% off through June 15th. All you have to do is go to the link in the description below, or just go to ridge.com/timelines and save that money. Okay, our dead last film here is extremely interesting because, and I'm going to say this a lot here, opinions were all over the map with it. But in 11th place, dead last, with 266 points, is the Spanish Dracula. It was ranked there 5 times, and its highest score was second place, which it did get twice. So I had this one pretty close to where it landed because I had it in 10th place myself. And if you don't know what this is, it's literally Spanish Dracula. They shot it for the foreign market using an entirely new cast, but using all the same sets and the same script as the regular release. And it was released in the same year. But look, my biggest issue with this one is Dracula himself. Like, I just don't get the same vibe from him that I do from Bela. And he's missing that sense of, like, peculiarity. He seems more like a wacky uncle than he does a mysterious force of dark nature.
Yo nunca bebo vino.
Like, watching them back to back made me realize just how damn good that Lugosi was and how effortless he made that creepiness seem. This guy, Carlos Villarreal, has an almost comical tone about him, but I don't really think that that was his intention. I think it's just his general presence. And it's not like it's a bad performance or anything, but it just pales in comparison and never quite feels like Dracula. And you know, it's really hard to compare with Dwight Frye, who turned Renfield into this grinning maniac with that oddball laugh. But I will say that Pablo Alvarez Rubio here, even though he never quite reaches that feeling that Frye did, also manages to make an impression. His Renfield doesn't come off as maniacal, like he's missing that element of just being disturbed. But he just goes so far over the top that it turns into a completely different performance. It's a whole other kind of crazy, and although I don't like it as much as I do Frye's, it's still something to behold. And with adding extra time to flesh some things out, you'd think that they'd fix that ending, right? Moving on now, let's go to our 10th place, and this was actually really close. These two movies were back and back in dead last, and there was a tie right at the deadline, but then the last two rankings came in and cemented Spanish Dracula in dead last, leaving 10th place with 260 points being The Phantom of the Opera from 1943. And this is wild. It was ranked dead last 11 times, more than double Spanish Dracula, but just had more high scores as well. So people were extremely split here, and it did get 2 first place nods. I did not have it ranked there though, since this one was my dead last pick. And my biggest issue here is that it just doesn't fit in terms of tone. Like, although most of the Universal films have this gothic atmosphere and a similar feel, this one just has this like schmaltzy tone to it, and it shifts pretty dramatically at the half-hour mark and finally starts to feel like one of the others, but it feels like we've just been killing time up until now. But then it goes right back into that like Technicolor world and gives you a whole bunch of opera. And I know that it's called Phantom of the Opera, but the word phantom comes first, you know? And again, the pacing is all off, and in a different way than in the 25 version. Here, instead of happening halfway through the movie, this chandelier scene happens with only 15 minutes left to go, and there just feels like quite a bit of filler in order to get us there. Way more time is spent dealing with how the Phantom got to be the Phantom, which lessened the mystique of the character to me. And plus, when they get to that big reveal, it's just a major letdown. With how iconic that the Phantom face from the original version was, this would have to at least up the ante slightly, but it's just meh. And I guess it's because Claude Rains didn't want a complicated makeup appliance, and it hurts the movie. But I will also say that as my dead last pick, I still really like this film. It's still something that should be watched, and it's gorgeous to look at. And on any other list, this would probably be higher, but in terms of the classic Universal monsters, for me, it just doesn't hit like the others do. Okay, number 9 now, and again, we're staying pretty close in points because this next one is close, with 252 points. We're looking at their first attempt at the lycanthrope legend, Werewolf of London. I'm saying it that way specifically for you guys. Like Spanish Dracula, this was also ranked dead last 5 times, but never got above 3rd place, which it got 1 time. And again, my ranking is fairly close to where this landed because I had it in 8th. And it's kind of shocking to find out that The Wolfman wasn't Universal's first go-around with lycanthropes, although this one definitely throws some weird stuff into the formula. Like, you've got some giant Audrey 2 looking plants that take up a good deal of the early part of the film, and it's just kind of weird because they seem like a big part of the plot, but then they're really not. Also, there's like this odd note of homoeroticism here as Wilfred is told about the horrible satanic werewolves that he knows about and how they're made by the bite, and then he caresses his arm. Like he's touching the wolf bite he got earlier, and I'm sure that subtext is something that I'm reading into it, but oh, I'm reading it. I'm also kind of confused as to what nationality Dr. Yogami is supposed to be, because I think he's supposed to possibly be Asian based on his name and odd way of speaking that I think may be some sort of an attempt at an accent, but it's hard to tell. The funny thing is that the werewolf is pretty subtle and doesn't look that much furrier than a regular person. Like if I saw this guy walking down the street, I'm not sure that I would give him a second glance. Like, I know people hairier than this. I have been hairier than this. The fangs are the only thing that look out of the ordinary. Strangely, story-wise, it feels more Jekyll and Hyde than it does a werewolf story. And all the elements of what we think about when we think werewolf are absent. And that's not necessarily a detriment to the overall story, because it's still interesting, and I do like this one. But I will admit that I don't enjoy it nearly as much as I do the ones I ranked higher. Now, number 8 was our first drop down in points, although it wasn't drastic. And I'll say that this is one that I would have never guessed would be down this far, because with 238 points, it's The Mummy. It was ranked dead last twice, which is the lowest amount so far, and did get one first place spot as well. That number 1 wasn't me, though, because I, once again, had this very close to where it ended up, since I put it in 9th. So my picks for these 4 have so far been the same, just like transposed. But this movie is so weird because the opening is giving you everything that you think that you want with a mummy movie. You've got the archaeologists and the tomb, and of course a mummy wrapped up in bandages, and hot damn, is that makeup design great. And it seems for a second like it's gonna be the kind of movie that you're expecting, but then like 11 minutes in, it switches gears and you have Imhotep just kind of as a regular dude, and he's got his own evil plot and trying to find the reincarnation of his lost princess. And as it goes on, it starts to feel less and less like a mummy movie and more like another version of Dracula, to be honest. And sadly, the biggest problem is that it drags. Like, I realize that a slower pace is part and parcel for films of this era, but I'm prepared for that. I'm comparing this in terms to the other films on this list, and it's a good deal slower. And when you combine that with the fact that I felt like I had already seen this film, just with Bela Lugosi, I had to put it down a bit lower. And again, this is one that, although I was a bit distracted by the fact that it wasn't really what I would expect from a mummy movie from this era, because in terms of like guys in bandages walking around, it's closer to the Brendan Fraser Mummy, but I didn't really let that knock it down too far. There's a bit to be said for something giving you what you're not expecting, but it's perhaps a bit different for me when we're talking about one of the first mummy movies. Our number 7 movie is another one that had some really big variations in terms of how people ranked it. And with 226 points, we have one that some people don't really consider a part of all of this, but it kind of is. And it's Phantom of the Opera from 1925. This one was ranked dead last 3 times, but was also ranked in first place 1 time. And I had this one in 7th, right where it landed. And just the existence of this film on this list is fascinating, because there's a mere 6 years difference between this and Dracula and Frankenstein. And the technical difference is just astounding. In those short 6 years, not only did talkies instead of silent pictures become the norm, but just the overall look of the films drastically changed. But that actually puts one aspect in this film's favor: the music, since this has a full orchestral accompaniment and the others did not, and often would feature live scores performed. This one feels fuller than some of the other entries, although this is only in the reissued version. The original 1925 version didn't have this and only had this audio placed in from 29 on. My absolute favorite bit of this one is when the whole troop is looking for the Phantom and they go down into the cellar, and when they get down there, one of the girls just does a completely random pirouette. Like, I'm totally creeped out, but I gotta dance. And it's just a little hard to judge this one because by today's standards, it's a little on the slow side, but it's still pretty rich with atmosphere and style. The real standout, though, is of course Lon Chaney, who not only plays the Phantom, but did the makeup for the character. And again, it's hard to envision now, but that unmasking scene was terrifying to audiences, even though he kind of had a comb over. And you know, as iconic as that design is, can we talk about his Mask of the Red Death outfit for a minute? Because that is just outstanding. But ultimately, I think this one's brought down by pacing. It's one of the longer films on this list, and it gets a touch repetitive, and some of it is due to the silent film tactic of lingering on their shots for longer than needed. You gotta love that ending though, like they threw him in the river. The end. Here we go now with our number 6 movie, and we had a big drop down in points here since we go from 226 all the way down to 180 now for a difference of 46 points. And I have to say that I was a bit shocked where this one landed. I thought for sure this was a top 3 contender, but in 6th place we have Dracula. It was never ranked dead last, the first movie on the list to do that, but it did get 4 10th place ranks. However, it did also manage to get 2 first place votes. And this is one that I had in 3rd place. And look, Dracula all comes down to one thing, and that's the performance of Bela Lugosi and the atmosphere that they created. And well, I guess that's 2 things. I feel like a lot of the early Universals had a modicum of atmosphere, so it shouldn't be that different here, but it really is. It just feels the most appropriate to its storyline, and it's perhaps one of the better fits for the whole Gothic aesthetic. The entire Universal vibe just seems acutely suited to a vampire tale. But my biggest problem here, and the reason why I can't rank it higher than I do, is the ending. They build up several different storylines in this whole rivalry between the Count and Van Helsing, and everything is leading to this final battle, and the movie just ends with this being like, oh yeah, Drac is over there asleep in that coffin, so I'm gonna go and kill him off screen now. And then he does. There's no fight, no struggle, nothing. There's just a yell off to the side somewhere, like Bela Lugosi is just off camera eating a cruller, just going. It's just a colossal anticlimax. Like, that being said, it may have kept this one out of my number 1 or 2 spot, but it's still freaking Dracula. It set the bar for vampire flicks. It defined Lugosi's career and paved the way for a million goth kids talking about the sweet music that the Children of the Night make. Like, I love what it has going on with the performances, and that goes beyond Drac. Van Helsing is pretty great as well. And I know I mentioned him a bit in the Spanish version, but how amazingly unhinged was Dwight Frye as Renfield? That creepy laugh just sells it.
Why, he's mad. Look at his eyes.
Coming in at number 5, this next one had another decent sized drop, but not too dramatic, because with 165 points, we've got The Creature from the Black Lagoon, the newest film on this list. It did manage to get 3 dead last scores, but also took 3 first place ones as well. And this is another one that I have right where it landed, because I have this in 5th place as well. And what's crazy here is that there's more than 20 years between this film and Dracula. And compare that to the freaking 6 years between Drac and the original Phantom. But what's weirder is that there's like 10 years between this and the 43 Phantom, and that film looks newer. Like, maybe it's because this is in black and white, but honestly, it works in this one's favor. And here's what I dig about this one. It's so far removed from the regular Universal vibe. It's on the water. It's in the sun. It's on a damn boat. It just doesn't quite scream gothic like every single other film on this list, but somehow still manages to match that vibe. It had the potential to stick out like a sore thumb, but it really didn't. And one of the absolute highlights is that creature suit. It looks fantastic, and the shots of it swimming around under the water look great. And it's weird to think that this entire thing was shot just right down at Universal Studios in Hollywood. Like, you see this little lake area out on the backlot tour, and it looks so small. You're like, how on earth did they make this look so huge? Getting down to the wire now, and we're at our number 4 movie, and this is one that, much like my surprise with Dracula being so low, this one I was surprised was so high, and with 161 points, just 4 points above Creature, we're looking at The Invisible Man. This one did get one dead last ranking, but it also ranked in first place 3 times. And here's another one that I have right where it hit because I also put this in 4th. And I love this one because so many of the Universal monsters are just that. Monsters. Supernatural creatures. There's basically 1 or 2 on this list that are just regular guys. The Invisible Man and the Phantom. And he's sort of a tragic guy, so you totally get why he's doing what he's doing. But Griffin, man, Griffin's just an evil asshole. He's the only one here that's just this horrible, horrible person for really no reason. Like I know that the formula has had a bit of an effect on him, but he's just wicked. And in terms of special effects, out of every movie on this list, it's the most complex. The invisibility effects are pretty wild for 1933 and had to just be completely mind-blowing for the people at the time. And that initial reveal, like, that's phenomenal. And a cool mixture of practical and optical effects. But I have a silly issue with this one, and a lot of Invisible Man movies, I guess. But there's a couple of scenes where he's attacking people, like choking this cop. And I know that he's invisible, but you know he's right in front of you, right? Like, just punch in front of you, like you know he's right here. And here's another funny bit about this movie that you don't really think about while you're watching it, but pretty much anytime you're seeing or not seeing the villain, as it were, he's buck naked. Like, you're looking at full frontal invisible nudity right here. Like, think about it. Those townspeople bust into his room and he's all like, okay, fine. Now you asked for it. Here's my dong. Look at it or don't, I guess. It also has the largest body count of any of these. Like, the dude derails an entire train and kills everyone on it.
Well, goodbye, Kemp. I always said you were a dirty little coward. You're a dirty, sneaking little rat as well. Goodbye.
Top 3 time, and here's where it gets interesting because the competition here was very fierce, and when the smoke cleared, we once again had a tie for second place. That's right, 2 movies ended up with 135 points each, and those 2 movies were Frankenstein and The Wolfman. So I needed a tiebreaker. I figured who better to settle this beef than our good friend and dead last alum, Matt Mastrella. Matt, what do you think? Which of these 2 deserves second place?
Hey guys, Matt the Perfect Meatball Mastrella here, telling you that Frankenstein is the superior film.
Okay, so that makes our third place movie The Wolfman, which had a wide range of rankings, but no dead lasts. But it did get 1 10th place spot and also got 4 first place votes. My ranking on this one was actually lower than the consensus though, since I put this in 6th place, but don't let that make it seem like I don't dig it. I love that this one starts with our hero literally peeping in on a woman with a telescope and then saying, I'm gonna sort of stalk her by pretending to shop in her store and then freaking her out by telling her what's in her room. Like, change the music of this scene and it's a whole different kind of movie. This one is also interesting because you think that you know all the tropes of werewolves, and this one features some of that, but then again, it's pretty different. Larry's attacked by what seems like a regular wolf. The werewolf, I'm saying wolf as much as possible, the werewolf sees pentagrams on the palms of his victims, and there's no mention of the full moon, and instead it becomes a werewolf when wolfsbane blooms. The movie's pacing is fairly brisk, so it's not exactly boring, but I do think it takes a bit too long for any wolf action to happen, since the first transformation we get is about 2/3 of the way in. And really, the wolf himself is the real draw here, because it's pretty great. Like, I love the little details about walking on arched feet, and what with today's werewolves looking like large wolves, I kind of miss this styling of lycanthrope, which still looks human, but also like a wolf. There's a certain amount of sadness here with the storyline between father and son, although I'll confess that I kind of find it hard to view Raines and Chaney as father and son, although their ages were different enough for it to be possible. Like, Chaney was like 35 and Raines was 52, so they're 17 years apart. But I guess it's because Chaney just looks so much older. So then we have an official second place movie, and it's the original Frankenstein. Matt, why did you choose Frank over the Wolfman?
For a couple of reasons. You have James Whale's brilliant direction. It just is an amazing looking film. Beautiful cinematography, black and white images. You got Boris Karloff playing the monster, who just kills it. You have amazing makeup by Jack Pierce. Colin Clive as the mad scientist is unrivaled. I mean, I love the Wolfman, but hands down, I think Frankenstein wins this one.
So then, also with 135 points and Matt's blessing, our second place movie becomes Frankenstein. And the monster did get 2 dead last rankings, but it was also ranked in first place 3 times. And I was one of those first place votes because I have a real soft spot for this one. I know that I mentioned the gothic aesthetic in Dracula and how much it fit the subject matter, but the same is true for Frankenstein. Every detail of the castle and the lab just adds to the story, and it feels like this real place with this distinct style. But the thing that just bowls me over here, every single time, is how damn effective that monster's design is. You think to yourself, this is almost 100 years old and wasn't that far into the advancement of film. And this makeup is just incredibly convincing. You never once look at this and just say, oh, that's a guy in a bunch of prosthetics. It looks like an actual monster. But where this one wins, where it's above the others, is the level of character involved. The monster is a fully rounded and sympathetic character, but so is the Doctor. It would be easy to just paint Henry as a clear villain and make the monster misunderstood, like they did with, say, The Bride with Clancy Brown and Sting. It'd also be easy to just have the monster be evil and full of rage and have the Doctor be well-intentioned. But this one plays both sides. Yeah, the Doc is a little mad, but he's never a cartoon character, and the monster's deeds are all very motivated. And here's a weird quirk that might be confusing for viewers. In the novel, the Doc's name is Victor Frankenstein. In most adaptations, they call him that as well. But in this film, his name is Henry Frankenstein. They changed it. But then they have another character, Henry's friend, that helps out, and that dude's name is Victor, which is just kind of weird. Like they wanted a Victor in there, but not the guy named Victor. Plus, you know what? That shot of the father carrying his dead daughter through the streets with that empty look in his eyes is one of the most unsung, horrific moments in all of cinema. I may be biased because I have a young daughter myself, but it's just haunting. And you know what will always win my heart? A good old-fashioned dummy drop. So that just leaves our number 1 movie, and it was a pretty clear winner this time around, since with just 92 points, we have The Bride of Frankenstein. The worst score that it got was 8th place, which it got twice, and this is the only movie on the entire list to get no dead last or 10th place votes. And it also got a whopping 12 first place nods. And I put this one in second myself, and hot damn, was it a close call. If it weren't for my nostalgia for the first one, I easily could have had this one in first place, because there's definitely elements that I enjoy more than that one. And I love that this movie opens up with them just being like, hey, remember the little girl who died in the first one? Well, basically just screw her whole family in general. Like if you're ever like Frankenstein isn't really a villain, then just watch him toss this random old lady to her death. And one of my favorite aspects of Bride is that it continues to sort of flesh out all the shades of gray that it can by adding Dr. Pretorius. As much as Henry represents this sort of like well-intentioned but misguided sort of evil, and the monster is this misunderstood ball of emotion that lashes out at its world, Pretorius is presented as this kind of straight villain. Like, you think that Doc is messing with the natural world? Well, look at what this dude is doing then. Like, you can sort of see what Henry was doing and think that he was trying to make the world a better place and advance science. But then you have this guy who's making little people in jars. And then, right after giving you a series of unfortunate events for the monster, showing various aspects of him, they give you this fantastic sequence with the blind man, and just as you're thinking, maybe this thing is kind of evil, you end up totally on his side. And that's one of the greatest things this movie does. It gives you this complex character with all these different aspects, and you're never quite sure how you feel about him. I mean, The Bride did, though. Like, what was she being so judgy for?
She's alive! Alive!
Weird science.
So there you have it, 11 classic films ranked up. And this was a pretty tough one to rank because there's so many great films here. So let's take a look at this list. And yeah, this is one of the closest to my personal rankings in a long time. So I'm pretty happy with this one here. I think most of mine are either just 1 or 2 movies off. Pretty cool. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. I want to know what your list would have been. You can leave that down below. If you were one of the patrons that ranked it and you want to tell us down below where you had them, go ahead and do that there too. If you disagree with anything on this list, that's fine. It's totally cool. Opinions are opinions. I'd like to hear what your opinions are. Give me why you liked this one over the other one. It's kind of always interesting for me to hear that. Not a big fan of people like, your rankings are wrong, you guys are dumb. That's not really the kind of thing that this channel is all about. We like different opinions, and different people having different opinions are a good thing. Let's hear them. Click on that like button, hit the subscribe button if you like what you see. Check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines. The patrons voted on this episode, and they get to vote on a different episode every single month. You can as well by going there. In the meantime, keep on watching, coming back to these videos. I surely appreciate that, and we'll see you very shortly for another great one. Thanks, and bye-bye.